Hi everyone. I'm just about to turn on another movie whilst I do my research and stuff. I'm just writing some stuff down. Um so with regards to the April 2023 reading, I'm going to be doing that tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure what time yet that I'm going to be doing it, but I am going to be doing it tomorrow. So luckily I've done all the preparation and all the research for the month of April, so it should be fun. Unfortunately, I mixed up some of my decks, so it's gonna be quite an unusual reading tomorrow, and I'll get into the reasons why it's gonna be unusual. So yeah, that's what's coming up for tomorrow. As for me, I'm doing okay. The electronic torture has been quite low level in comparison to how how it could get. I have been experiencing heart palpitations during my sleep because again, it's when you're about to go to sleep or when you're about to go to bed. That's usually when you're supposedly most vulnerable to electronic attacks. So yes, I have been getting it. I have been fired at my skin. Again, you can see on my skin where it's been fired on. So yeah, I've been fired on my skin. Um, I'm a little bit perturbed because I've got this small lump right here, and I'm trying to decide whether or not it's an entry wound or if it's like something inherently wrong with my body, but it hasn't gone yet, so I'm a bit worried about that. Um, Yeah, there's a lot of things that I need to take care of health wise that isn't being taken care of right now. But, depression is a hell of a thing. And I'm in the depressive stages at the moment. Um, Emotionally, I'm actually okay, but it's just the chemical stuff that's really fucking me up. And then on top of that, I've got, the usual period trouble, even though the cramps haven't been terrible. And I feel like the reason why the cramps haven't been terrible is because either I'm of a certain age now and I'm used to it, or it's because I've been eating more fruit and veg. It could be the latter, honestly. It could be the fact that I'm eating more fruit and veg. I still eat crap, don't get me wrong, but I am eating fruit and veg more, and I am drinking a lot more water than I used to. I can get through a bottle in one day. Um, so I'm drinking a lot of water, I'm taking a lot of fruit and veg, so that could be one of the reasons why my periods aren't so scary. Do you know what I mean? But I still end up being very drained and tired and all the rest of it. And the reason why I talk about my cycle is because of what the electronic torture actually does to women when it comes to um experiencing either hemorrhaging from the inside or the disruption of the uterine wall, which is a monthly thing that's supposed to happen. Sometimes what will happen is that the electronic torture will be timed right in line with your period, so that when you do start bleeding heavy during that cycle, it's simply seen as just your period rather than your period plus the torture. So that's why I talk about my cycle so much, because it's actually important in relation to the torture. And I've been thinking a lot about how all of this experimentation ties back to the Black community in particular. And again, if people don't like it when you talk about the Black community because it's too woke, well, I'm going to be woke until the day I die, for the simple reason that as long as I have the skin color and as long as I have to go through what I have to go through with this skin color, I'm going to talk about it. So it really makes me think about prominent Black people that have died of cancer. There was one TI that I know that has been around the world and that has talked to all kinds of people. Now, I don't know this for a fact. I was told this. I don't know this for a fact. But from what I've been hearing, it's kind of unusual for people within highly melanated countries like Jamaica or Africa or places like that to have as much experience with cancer as Black people do in Western societies. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, because there's been a lot of misinformation when it comes to Black people and non-ionized radiation. So I don't know if that's true, but we must remember that these directed energy weapons have been around for decades. This experimentation into static electricity and laser technology and frequencies being used as weapons have been experimented with for decades. So it would not surprise me that many prominent Black people who have died of cancer, especially at young ages, were most likely bombarded with non-ionized radiation. If we remember the story of Donny Hathaway was definitely subject to mind control because he was tagged as paranoid schizophrenic. And I personally believe that, given what he said about the FBI or about the CIA before he died, that voice to skull was definitely being used on him in order to make him and everyone else think that he was sick. Now, again, I don't want to disrespect the Hathaway family with what I'm saying. I don't want to disrespect anybody with what I'm saying. I'm just simply connecting the dots based on what I've observed. There are a lot of prominent Black people that have died of cancer. And, you know, Bob Marley apparently died of cancer in his foot. I'm thinking, there's no fucking way. Like, it has to be non-ionized radiation that caused cancer. How do you end up with cancer in your foot, please? How do you even end up with cancer in your fucking foot? So, you know, there's so many people in this world who have been, you know, subjected to cancer. And, you know, hang on, I shared a link with her. Olive Morris. So Olive Morris also died from cancer at the age of 27. So I'm connecting these dots. Bob Marley, Olive Morris, like many people who have died of cancer, apparently mysteriously at really young ages. Like, it just makes me think of non-ionized radiation and electronic weapons or weaponized frequencies that have been used on them. And it really kind of paints a picture for me as well, because my parents knew at least one person, or knew of one person, that was involved with the British Black Panthers in Harlesden. They know of at least one person. And you know how the police and secret services work. Anybody who is associated with persons of interest, even loosely, they tend to attack those people, and they can attack those people intergenerationally. Now, in my family's case, I don't think that alliance with the British Black Panthers, or you know, like barely knowing somebody within the British Black Panthers, I don't think that alone is going to cause somebody to be targeted individuals. I think there's other factors as well as to why my family was targeted in the first place. I think there's other factors going on. But given that there was one British Black Panther, I think arguably she was arguably she was one of the people who pioneered the movement over here. You know, you've got these people dying of cancer over here. I just don't think it's coincidence. And then to find out that there are so many Black people here that have been targeted as a result of MI5 putting them on fucking lists, like on their arrival over here. Now, these were literally British citizens because they were part of the Commonwealth, and they were still targeted and put on lists. And I doubt many of the Black families that have been put on those lists have even found out that they were on lists or not, or they even had the tools to be able to get themselves off those lists. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not making much sense, but for me, I'm just connecting dots and seeing how these things are manifested and played out. And it's like I said before, Black folk are usually the first people to be experimented on, or the most brutal experimentations are usually reserved for us or indigenous people around the globe, and especially women. So I'm just connecting the dots. That's all I'm doing, connecting the dots. You've got people dying early of cancer at a time where cancer isn't even supposed to be a factor. You've got to connect the dots. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, it just really makes me think. Um, so, and then on top of that, I went to a black school as a kid. You know what I mean? I went to a black school as a young child briefly. So that could play another part, but then again, there was a handler coming out of that school. I think they're a handler anyway. I think I know who the handler is as well, but yeah, it's terrifying once you really start to unpack everything that's been going on. And this whole paranoid schizophrenia thing again. When I think of Donny Hathaway, it's very easy to make people hear voices if you have the technology to do it. And the way people make it sound, they make it sound as if it's something out of a fantasy book. It's actually very easy to do if you have the technology. And they try to make out like Donny Hathaway had a really severe mental illness, which I think is abhorrent and an insult to his memory. But then again, you all know why the paranoid schizophrenic diagnosis is there. It's there to make victims of the government look not only look crazy, but to diminish their evidence and admissibility in court. That's what it's there for. So whilst I'm certainly disgusted, I'm not surprised. It just makes you think, really. So as always, it started first and hardest in the black community, and then they expanded outwards into, I think it started with the disabled, actually, not just the black community, but it actually started with the disabled as well. I think disabled and black folks, they get it first and hardest, and then it moves into the trans community, then it moves into gays and lesbians, then it moves into women. So it's like with these, with this type of torture, electronic torture, psychological torture, there's always a hierarchical structure that goes upwards. It always goes upwards. It is important for white supremacy to maintain the lie that they are the good guys, because that's how they're able to continuously get away with shifting the population to their liking through increasingly insidious, though no less brutal methods. Racism is on the rise too. And the thing about it is that once again, you've got evil people in the world, and people are racializing that evil. For example, there was a mother who was grieving over her son because her son died during gang warfare. And she revealed that the killers actually not turned around to her, but they texted her saying, "Ha ha, we killed your son." I paraphrase. The comments that I saw underneath that video were absolutely disgusting. And they were talking about how, rap culture's to blame, and oh, this is black culture. There was even one motherfucker who called for genocide. Now, this is what happens when you get people who racialize evil. Because while they're over here talking about how it's black culture for us to fight one another, for us to kill one another, I don't see none of these gangs having nuclear bombs. And if they were able to make or get microwave weapons, I don't think they're the type of people to actually waste their time with that. I feel like that's more of a loner white stuck by his computer thing. I don't see any of them firing nuclear weapons or having nuclear weapons stockpiled and waiting for someone to talk shit before they fire those nukes. I don't see any of these black gangs experimenting on families like fucking intergenerationally and en masse. I don't see black gangs doing that. I don't see rappers doing that. Again, there are evil people in the world. There's no need to racialize it. But if people want to racialize it, we need to talk about how I think it's called rDNA technology is apparently being used for genocide anyway in some cases. It's not black people doing it. It's not black rappers doing it. It's not black rappers that have fucking caused environmental problems all around the world in the name of profit. Again, there's no need to racialize evil. But if we really want to go there, my black skin or anybody else's melanated skin is the least of your fucking worries. The problem is that we live in a world full of fucking narcissists, or we live in we live in a world that is basically run by psychopaths. We live in a narcissism run by psychopaths that are usually the first to strike, and then they go and arm themselves more heavily than the person they fucked with, so that if the person fights back or the person defends themselves, then the person defending themselves suffers more than the person who started shit to begin with. If you imagine that as a microcosm for how the entire world is dealt with, that's exactly what we're dealing with on a racial level. That's exactly what we're dealing with on a gender level. That's exactly what we're dealing with sexuality. That's exactly what we're dealing with anything to do with privilege versus marginalization. That is exactly what we're dealing with. We've got people starting shit with other people, unprovoked, most of the time. And then what they will do is they will arm themselves more heavily than the person they fucked with, so that the person they fucked with, if they even think of defending themselves, the other person who's heavily armed shuts down the conversation. That's narcissistic behavior. That's narcissistic behavior. Black people have been met with all kinds of racist bullshit. I'm not saying, like, again, this is the thing. This is the reason it pisses me off, right? This is one of the reasons why racism pisses me off. It's because black people, like any other human beings, we have good and evil in us. But we can't be complex. We're not allowed nuance. It's either we're noble and we're amazing and we're great and we're fantastic and we can't do no wrong, or we shouldn't be here. We don't get the chance to have nuance. We don't get the chance to have complexity. We don't get that chance to have those things because we're dealing with a narcissism. We live in a world where the people who provoke us the most, or who go out of their way to be in our business, make it their business to arm themselves more heavily than we're armed, so that they can turn around. If we defend ourselves, they can turn around and meet us with greater violence in the hopes of shutting down the conversation. You think of civil rights of any kind, and that's exactly what's happened. Just go around fucking shit up, then get yourself bigger weapons, more invested goons, fucking armies of fucking flying monkeys. Get all of that together so that when the person comes back around and has to defend themselves against you, you're ready with an army of cunts and an arsenal of fucking bullshit. This is what life is like as a targeted individual. It's what life is like as anyone who's marginalized. This world is full of narcissists who want to start shit, then arm themselves so that they can prove that they're strong, so that they got something to prove. I can't wait for the day when the world is filled with people just like them. I can't wait for that. Then they're going to see what victory really means and how much is worth when all the competition has left the building. About genocide. What? Sure. It takes a special type of evil to kill someone and then text their family members and say, yeah, we killed your family members. It takes a special type of fucking evil to do that shit. I can't even deny that. But to try to advocate for eradicating a whole race of people because of those people who were evil, you're fucked up. Speaking of which, I had to delete one of my Facebook friends from my Facebook list. I should really name them and shame them, but I had to delete one of my Facebook friends from my Facebook list because what they did was they showed. Now I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this. I think this is fucked up behavior as well. So they have a bunch of black youths beating up a white person. Now, again, I don't agree with this. I do not agree with this. I think that's a fucked up thing to do. Okay? I think it's a fucked up thing to do to jump anybody. All right? So the black kids beat up this white kid. Now, instead of kind of focusing on the fact that it was wrong that this group of black kids beat up this white kid, immediately the assumption was that this kid was jumped because they were white. So this person made this assumption that this person jumped these black kids jumped this white kid because they were white. When that's not how that fucking shit works. Those black kids could have easily jumped that white kid, not because he was white. They could have picked on him because they thought he was weak. They could have picked on him because he said something racist. Sometimes that happens. But people don't understand the context. But because the victim is one color and the group of people are another color, all of a sudden, you're white, fuck you. And that's the reason. Like, no. Again, there have been racial attacks on white people. This is true. There have been racial attacks on white people. But before you understand the context of why that kid was beat up, before you understand the context, even though there is no context to understand, that kid's being jumped. There's nothing left to say. That kid's being jumped by about, 10 people? What's there left to say? So before you understand the context of what's going on, you're already talking about shooting children. You're talking about gun laws. You're talking about shooting children. Oh, the government doesn't want us to arm ourselves. And then you've got cunts in the comments talking about critical race theory. What the fuck has critical race theory got to do with 10 or 11 kids jumping on one kid and potentially hospitalizing that kid? What the fuck does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? This is exactly what I'm saying. It's that narcissistic shit. This is the same group of people that have enjoyed the privilege given to them, the psychological privilege given to them by centuries of oppression. By centuries of oppression, right? And then the second that we get something like this and we get some wrongdoing done to a white person by black people, now it's we need to get our guns out. Are you fucking crazy? If you'd have seen 10 white kids jumping on a white kid, I guarantee that would not have come out of your mouth. I guarantee you wouldn't talk about no critical race theory, and you wouldn't talk about guns either. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say black people are not allowed nuance. We are human just like everybody else, and we have good and evil within us. The evil is exemplified in the kids jumping that young soul. God help him. I hope he gets better, because that was fucked up. And I also hope he gets justice, because that was some fucked up shit to do. Okay? So as far as that poor soul who got beaten up goes, and as far as that poor mother who had to receive a text from her son's murderers, as far as that goes, I hope those people get justice for what they've suffered. And I hope that the people who did that to them don't get away with that shit, because they don't deserve to get away with that shit. But this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say any excuse. This is what happens when you live in a narcissist system. Evil people are not just evil. You gotta attach race to it to make yourself feel better about your fuck shit. And let's be absolutely clear. Racism is not just about jealousy, even though it can be. It's also about shame. It's also about shame. Some people know that their racism is wrong and they feel ashamed of it, so they double down. Of course, there are some people who don't regret it, don't care, and that's up to them. But there are a lot of people who feel ashamed, so they double down on their racism. They double down on their privilege. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to put up with people being racist to you. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that, the whole subject of racism and is a lot more complex than people think, and it's a lot more complex than people know. It's not just about people being jealous of you. Again, it's a huge factor. Jealousy is a huge factor, but it's not the only factor. Shame can also play a part in it. And when that shame goes far enough, you want to eradicate all reminders of it. And that's why we've got cunts out here talking about genocide. Because when you feel ashamed enough of yourself and you keep seeing reminders of your worst self in the form of people that you've continually harbored hatred towards, instead of working on your own shit, of course you want to get rid of them. But genocide, this is exactly what I'm talking about. We've got good and evil in every race. But again, I don't see no black people out here with as many nuclear weapons. You've got the most armed country in the world is white-led. The people who have done arguably the most violence worldwide have been white people. When black people get violent, we tear communities apart. When white supremacy gets violent, or the most powerful white people in the world get violent, they tear apart the whole world. We are not built that. Again, there's good and evil in every race. But what pisses me off is people try to act like there's an equivalency there, and there isn't. There really isn't. There really, really isn't. And it's fucked up when people act like there is. We're literally going through gang stalking right now because the US and the UK and the Five Eyes, they want to maintain their white supremacy. That's the whole reason gang stalking even exists. That's the whole reason gang stalking even exists. Most of it is white-led. There are other countries profiting from it and, trading fucking directed energy weaponry and acoustic weaponry. Yeah, there are other countries trading in it, including African ones. Yes, there are. But it's white supremacy at the head of everything. That all of it is headed by white supremacy. And if people don't get that, they're naive. You got our DNA technology being used for genocide as well. It's not black people. It's not brown people doing it. This is exactly what I'm saying when I say we live in a narcissist system. Every single race of people has good and bad in them, like I said before. And the virtues of different races, they differ according to who they are. Black people, we have our virtues. White folk, generally, you have your virtues. But our evils, like it just. That's why I don't like that demonization shit. I really don't like it. I really don't like it. We're not out here ending worlds. We're not doing that. I'm tired of people coming for us without a way home, and then when we talk our stuff, Truth hurts. Truth fucking hurts. No wonder you run away from it. You know what I mean? I didn't make any sense. I know I didn't make any sense today, but I don't care. You know, I hate saying this stuff because it's, you know, for me, human beings are human beings. It doesn't matter what race you are. But then there are certain things in history that like you can't avoid. You can't avoid talking about it because it's there and it's the truth. And as long as people avoid it, it's just going to lead to the same mistakes being made over and over again. Truth be told, I used to be the type of person who didn't like talking about black issues. And it was through a combination of my own black people not really understanding me like that, and the fact that black history was just so painful to get into. Because even worse than the fact that we were slaves is the fact that we weren't. Is the fact that we did so much for this world. Now, we were problematic too. We had slaves too. It's true. We did. But the brutality, even worse than the fact that we were slaves like for 400 years or whatever, or 400 years, is the history, the rich history that we had built up for thousands of years beforehand that were ripped from us. My name is Fabienne Deacon. My name comes from a European tradition where people needed to have surnames because of the plague. And the fact that my name is Deacon, Deacon is an English surname. If I have to think about all the atrocities that have been done to black folk, not only just by white people, but by the Arab community, by literally every other community, if I think about it for too long, I might just burn down this whole fucking planet. And as a youngster, that's why I didn't want to deal with black issues. It wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I cared so much that it just threatened to just turn me into just a ball of fucking rage. And that's before we get into the black tax. That's before we get into redlining. That's before we get into urban development design specifically to keep people down wealth-wise, even though there are a lot of rich black people. They're nowhere near as rich as they should be for the simple reason that white supremacy exists. Having to think about all of that as a young woman, on top of thinking about the injustice done to women, on top of thinking about the injustices done to queer people, on top of thinking about the injustices done to people with hormonal issues and mental issues, on top of that, thinking about the injustices that the government places on their own people through those fucking lists of theirs. The more you think about all the injustices of the world, is the more you feel like burning the whole fucking world down. So of course I retreated in culture. Of course I retreated in culture and in talking points and in subject matters that really had nothing to do with me. Of course I did. Of course I did. If I had to think about, as a youngster, if I had to think about any of that, I would have just snapped. I would have just snapped and fucked up everybody. And that was before I even found out I was a targeted individual with all the hatred and injustice in the world. That was before I even found out about being a target and how narcissistic people were, how people showed me their narcissism so easily because it's quite evident that I have autism, even though it's undiagnosed, and all my mental health problems. The amount of people that found it so easy to be abusive in front of me. And that's just on an individual level before we even get into anything systemic. That's why I never used to really deal with black issues. Racism is probably the most destructive form of bigotry there is, even though it's not the father of bigotry. The father of bigotry is actually misogyny. But racism is probably the most destructive form of bigotry there is. And having to talk about it, having to talk about the brutality, having to talk about the suffering, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And on top of that, having my own black people not understand me, having my own black people be a part of my torture, I couldn't talk about it. So everything I chased after were things that didn't belong to me. And it was because of that. It was because the brutality was just too much to face. And it's only now at the age of 38 that I can look at that brutality that is aimed on us to this day, and I can see it for what it is. Without letting it drag down my self-esteem, without letting it drag down my joy. It's only now that I'm almost 40 that I can look at all these things without letting it ruin my spirit. You know. But a lot of wrongdoing has happened in this world. A lot of wrongdoing. And there are so many people walking around lying to themselves. Walking around lying to themselves, like not facing up to what the world is really like. People refuse to face up to it. They just refuse. And I understand it, but I don't understand it. Because it's just going to lead to the same shit happening all over again. It's already done that. It's already done that. You know? I love human beings, man. I love human beings way more than human beings deserve. I think we all do. I think we all love human beings way more than we should be loved. We're trash, bro. We really are. We really are. Garbage. Garbage. Absolute garbage. We don't want to solve the really big problems of the world. We rather hide behind scapegoats. When things get tough, we run, we hide. And we hide behind people who are already being brutalized enough as it is. We're cowards. We are fucking cowards. All of us. It's just that the amount of privilege you have, it dictates how much of a coward you can afford to be. How much of a coward you can afford to be, not how much of a coward you are, because we all have the same amount of cowardice. And the more privileged you are, unfortunately, is the more you can afford to be a coward and not learn anything. Leads to the same shit happening all over again. And then when things go wrong, no responsibility taken. Somebody else's fault. It's always the fault of the person that you bullied because you have the bigger gun and you can control the conversation. Fuck. This world's a mess. I watch Marvel movies. I love Marvel movies, but yeah, it's propaganda. I know. It's just well done propaganda. I'm gonna watch another one, by the way, tonight. Going through the entire series in chronological order, just for shits and giggles. I think I'm more than halfway through actually. So yeah, I'm gonna do that because I've already done my readings today. All I've got to do is prepare for tomorrow's April 2023 reading, and yeah. For those of you interested in the tarot, I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Peace and blessings. Bye-bye.